Part 2, here we go.
For the campfire. So we can reevaluate and reestablish what we believe about the hardships we've gone through. We have feelings at the time, we have feelings later on. We continue to experience these pains and pleasures as we go through life, and we have an ability to make the choices about what we relate to what.
So we can reevaluate, people can reevaluate the troubles and problems and hardships and suffering that they have in life. Well, I'm sure they can to a certain extent, but some things just can't simply be circumnavigated by changing the way you regard them or you relate to them. I mean, if you're born in a slum in India, for example, and your mother's got AIDS and she's a heroin addict, and your father beats you, and you live in absolute poverty and squalor, and you have absolutely no prospects, and you develop a serious illness when you're a child, and you're forced into slavery and by a cruel taskmaster, and he's sadistic, and he likes to chop your fingers off if you step out of line. I mean, how far can changing your mindset on these things actually help to resolve the absolute disgusting, wretched, messy, horrible, awful state of that person's life?
And this is the beneficial thing in terms of bringing somebody into this world. I like the dropping Krugerrand's idea. I think that's actually a very useful image for various philosophical things, probably. But as you pointed out, you can choose to leave this world. So if somebody...
Yeah, I've already been there. I've told you how you can leave this world. I mean, it's a very unpalatable possibility, but I think it says a lot for how wretched and horrible life can get, that 1 million people a year worldwide actually kill themselves.
Brought into this world, they haven't lost the chance of non-existence. And you say, but once they're in this world, they have this vested, this investment of staying with it. Well, if that's true, then the non-existent people do have a benefit. Why? Because as soon as you give them life, they'll want to live. And if you really know that, if you really know that giving something life makes it want to live, then yeah, that's a net positive. That's an anticipated potential positive.
Stop. You can't anticipate whether your child will or will not want to live and not find life repugnant. I mean, some people, most people, sure, but there's a significant minority of people who don't want to live, and you have no idea. You're throwing the dice with their fate. You have no idea whether they will want to live or not.
You have to take into account. The fact is, though, we're really dealing with, we don't know if people are going to want to live.
Bingo. We don't know. We don't know. We don't know. I think you have to really reflect on that. We don't know. We're gambling. And for what? So that they will develop and grow as a person to reduce their suffering, and so that they will thank their lucky stars and be grateful that they were born, when if they hadn't have been born, they wouldn't have been deprived of these things anyway.
And the final thing is I wouldn't throw in your face, you should commit suicide, but this issue does come up. You're talking about being tortured, about to be being tortured, and having a chance to commit suicide by taking a poison pill. But you're in that situation right now, right?
Oh, shit. Phew, that's a close shave.
It's an analogy to say that that's basically the situation we're in right now. That life is going to...
No, I'm not in that situation right now. You're not in that situation right now, But, I mean, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that one day we could be. And in any case, I just used that thought experiment, that scenario, to ram home the fact that under certain circumstances, non-existence is preferable to existence. And once you can recognize that in principle, in theory, you can feed that into constructing the asymmetrical asymmetry evident in Benatar's postulations.
Torture you in the future. Well, why does it have to be quite so immediate as it is in your example for you to take the poison pill? I mean, if life is that way already, and it's basically you're drawing an equivalency that the suffering you're going to have to endure in reality is akin to this terrible suffering you don't want to endure.
Well, you've completely misread me there, because I would not draw an analogy between that tortured prisoner scenario and the day-to-day life of 99.999999 recurring percent of the human race. It was just a thought experiment to show that non-existence can be preferable to existence.
In reality, there's some situations in which you would rather not exist, and there's some situations in which you'll be happy that you do exist. So, yeah, I don't think it is interesting stuff. We could probably delve into it deeper. I'm sure that you will think I've missed some of the strengths or the parts of the argument, and that's fair. Maybe I have.
Yes, I have. Yes, I do think you've missed some understanding of the asymmetry. You haven't really addressed the asymmetry. You've just said it's willful, it's willfully conceived. I've managed to deal with these things, so everybody else should be able to as well.
That's my take. I'm not super impressed with this line of reasoning, because it's biased towards thinking that a negative is somehow solid and a positive, is not.
But it's not, as I explained at the start of these two videos, it's not bias, it's a fact that you cannot be deprived if you're not born. I mean, do you regret that the sperm that you're carrying now, will not develop, to produce a future individual, I mean, if you answer that question, then, I'd be interested to hear what you think about that, but,
They share the same amount of importance. If someone's suffering is important, then their pleasure is important.
Yes, if somebody exists, their pain is important and their pleasure is important. But if they don't exist, then their pleasure isn't important, and the prospect of them suffering for something that, in order to experience positive things that would be a deprivation is just ridiculous.
You can't say that, I get this kid with cancer example used all the time.
I don't think that was me. That was probably Amendum.
Trying to point to the kid with cancer and the suffering that he and his family is going through. But when the kid recovers, which sometimes happen, you can't then discount the pleasure, the relief of that suffering.
Yes, it sometimes happens, but it by no means always happens. And even now, you're still couching pleasure or relief or positive mental states in terms of a relief of a negative, horrible, anxious, worried about your child state. I mean, you're not producing like a viable, pleasure in its own right situation here. Although there are those sorts of things,
Discount that. That's not balanced. You have to count both or not count both. All right. Cheers.
Cheers, Pyrrho.